General's son Bradley Hampton demanded a salute from a veteran standing guard at Arlington National Cemetery, expecting his father's name to command respect like it always did back home. But the veteran didn't raise a hand. He didn't even acknowledge the demand. He didn't so much as blink. And what happened next left an entire memorial grounds dead silent and reminded a privileged son that some things in this world simply cannot be bought, bullied, or inherited. Want to know exactly how it unfolded? First, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling us where in the world you're watching from. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. You know those solemn Washington afternoons where the sky hangs like hammered steel and there's just enough wind to make the American flag snap crisply around the Arlington National Cemetery? The kind of day where the air tastes faintly of rain that hasn't quite decided to fall yet, and visitors cluster respectfully behind the rope barriers, phones already lowered, waiting to witness the changing of the guard at the tomb of the unknown soldier. That's exactly what it was like when the convoy of jet-black SUVs came rolling through those massive wrought iron gates. Vehicles so sleek and heavily tinted they looked like they'd been carved from obsidian. You could spot them from 5 blocks away. That unmistakable VIP look. Reinforced plating thick enough to stop a small rocket. Windows darker than sunglasses at midnight. And that subtle but unmistakable air of extremely important people inside. The lead vehicle had barely come to a complete stop before visitors were lifting their phones, trying to catch a glimpse of whoever was significant enough to roll up to America's most sacred ground like they owned the place. Security personnel emerged first. Men in identical dark suits with the kind of vigilant professionalism that comes from years of keeping high-profile people alive in complicated places. Then the passenger door swung open and out stepped Bradley Hampton. At 40, the man moved through the world like he was perpetually walking onto a stage where everyone was supposed to know his name and applaud accordingly. Navy blazer perfectly tailored. Red tie catching the pale afternoon light. Already scanning the memorial grounds with the calculating gaze of someone who's mentally appraising the real estate value per square foot. Still doing the whole military museum thing, huh? He says to one of his aides. And yeah, he says it loud enough for the nearby visitors to hear every single syllable. What Bradley Hampton didn't know, what most visitors never realize, is that the motionless figure standing guard at his post isn't just some theatrical prop in a formal uniform. Thomas Graham, 65 years old, retired Special Forces, has been standing at perfect attention for exactly 47 minutes. Not a blink, not a twitch, not the slightest acknowledgement of the growing crowd or the approaching commotion. His precisely pressed uniform is so sharp you could probably cut yourself on the creases. His boots polished to a mirror shine that's reflecting the gray Washington sky. And his eyes are fixed straight ahead with that 1,000-yard stare that only comes from serious military training. But here's what Bradley doesn't understand about this particular guy in uniform. Thomas Graham isn't just some cemetery decoration. This man served 3 tours in Afghanistan as part of Operation Enduring Freedom, providing security for forward operating bases in some of the most hostile territory in Helmand Province. We're talking about the kind of deployment where maintaining your position under pressure isn't just ceremonial, it's literally life or death. During his second tour, Graham was part of the security detail at Forward Operating Base Chapman when insurgent forces launched a coordinated attack on the base perimeter. Mortar rounds were falling like deadly rain. Automatic weapons fire was raking the compound, and chaos was erupting on all sides. While other personnel were evacuating to hardened shelters, Graham refused to abandon his assigned post at the main gate until every single person in his sector was accounted for and safely evacuated. His citation reads, Sergeant Graham displayed exceptional composure under extreme duress, maintaining his position under sustained enemy fire and ensuring the safe evacuation of 14 civilian contractors and 6 wounded personnel. His unwavering discipline under life-threatening conditions exemplifies the highest traditions of military service. After retiring with multiple decorations including the Silver Star and Purple Heart, Graham now volunteers at Arlington, standing guard to honor his fallen brothers and sisters. The discipline isn't performative. It's bone deep. The kind that gets ingrained through years of training and tested under the worst possible circumstances. The military liaison approaches Bradley with that perfectly practiced smile that only comes from years of managing difficult VIP visitors. The kind of expression that says, "I am being paid very well to remain pleasant." She's probably mid-40s, impeccably dressed, with the bearing of someone who's guided dignitaries through protocol disasters before. "Mr. Hampton," she says with crisp professionalism, "welcome to Arlington National Cemetery. If you'll allow me to escort you to the designated viewing area for today's ceremony." Bradley waves her off with the casual dismissal of someone who's never met a boundary he couldn't simply ignore. "No need for the guided tour, sweetheart. My father commanded half your military. Hell, he probably knows this place better than most of your staff." His entourage exchanges those perfectly diplomatic but increasingly strained glances that only come from working with someone who treats national protocols like a series of polite suggestions. And with that, he strides off the designated visitor pathway, heading straight across the hallowed grounds toward the ceremonial area where most people instinctively understand you don't just wander. Behind the rope barriers, you can literally see the visitors' phones rising like some synchronized digital ballet because everyone can sense it. Something's about to go sideways. And nobody wants to miss capturing the moment when entitlement meets sacred ground. "Now that's what I call commitment to the bit," Bradley announces, pointing toward Graham with the casual gesture you'd use to select something from a restaurant menu. Wonder if he's even real or just some sophisticated animatronic they've got running on a loop. His aide, a nervous-looking man in his 30s who's probably already calculating how many apology calls this afternoon is going to require, shifts uncomfortably. "Sir, perhaps we should stick to the scheduled tour activities." But Bradley's already moving, striding across that sacred ground with his trademark swagger, leaving his entire entourage scrambling to keep up while trying to maintain some semblance of dignity. A small girl, maybe 6 or 7, tugs on her father's sleeve with the kind of insistent urgency only children can manage. "Dad, is that man allowed to walk over there? There's a rope for a reason, isn't there?" Her father doesn't answer immediately. When he does, his voice carries that careful tone parents use when they're trying to explain something complicated to a child while also processing their own discomfort. "No, sweetheart. But some people think rules are just suggestions that apply to other people." Bradley stops just a few feet from Thomas Graham, close enough to make it personal, far enough to maintain plausible deniability if anyone questions his proximity to the ceremonial post. He folds his arms and tilts his head like he's examining a particularly interesting museum exhibit. "Incredible attention to detail," he says, projecting his voice for the benefit of the growing audience. "I mean, the commitment to the performance is almost believable. You'd think they'd at least program in some blinking, though. Maybe a little eye movement to make it more lifelike." A few uncomfortable chuckles ripple through his immediate entourage. The kind of forced laughter that says, "I have to find this funny because he's my boss, but honestly, this is getting really weird, and I wish I was anywhere else right now." Graham doesn't react. Not even a flutter of his eyelids. His rifle remains at precisely the regulation angle. His white-gloved hands positioned exactly as protocol demands. His gaze fixed on that distant point that guards are trained to focus on. As unmoved by the commentary as the ancient headstones beneath his polished boots. An elderly gentleman wearing a faded military blazer with a small 101st Airborne Division pin on the lapel shakes his head slowly. He's standing near the middle of the crowd, probably in his 70s, with the kind of weathered face that suggests he's seen his share of conflicts. "That one held the line at Chapman," he murmurs to his companion, his voice carrying just enough to be heard by those nearby. Mortar rounds falling like hail, insurgents trying to breach the perimeter, and he never moved from his post. "You think he's going to break formation for some rich boy's tantrum?" Bradley tries a different approach, spreading his arms in that exaggerated, "come on, be reasonable," gesture he's perfected over years of expecting automatic cooperation. "You salute your commanders, don't you? I've been saluted by Marines, Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, guys who've seen actual combat in places most people can't even pronounce. Hell, I even got a salute from a French general once, and trust me, that's harder to earn than you'd think." He actually mimics a military posture for a moment, raising his hand in what he probably thinks is a crisp salute, but comes across as more of a theatrical gesture that would be amusing if it weren't so deeply inappropriate given the setting. "Come on," Bradley continues, his voice taking on that edge of someone who's not accustomed to being ignored. "Just a little acknowledgement. Show some respect for my father's legacy. Some basic courtesy between a general's son and a soldier. That's not too much to ask, is it?" Behind the barriers, you can actually feel the collective intake of breath from the watching crowd. A teenager with bright blue hair whispers to her friend, "Is he seriously trying to order around an Arlington guard? Like, does he not understand how this works?" "Apparently not," comes the reply from a girl wearing a university sweatshirt. "This is either really brave or really, really stupid. I'm definitely going with stupid. Like, impressively stupid." "Sir," the word cuts across the memorial grounds like a blade through silk, crisp, authoritative, unmistakably military, and carrying the weight of absolute certainty. Everyone turns to see Colonel Maria Coleman emerging from the memorial side entrance, moving with that particular kind of measured urgency that suggests someone in real authority has decided things have gone quite far enough. She's not particularly tall, maybe 5 feet 6 inches in her polished boots, but she carries herself with the kind of presence that makes physical height completely irrelevant. Her uniform is pressed to razor sharpness. Service ribbons catching the pale afternoon light. And her eyes hold the calm certainty of someone who's dealt with entitled visitors before and knows exactly how these situations need to be resolved. "I'm Colonel Coleman, Arlington Memorial Protocol," she announces, her voice carrying that distinctly military quality of being perfectly polite while simultaneously brooking absolutely no argument whatsoever. "This is a restricted ceremonial area. I must ask you to return to the designated viewing path immediately." Bradley turns to face her with what he probably thinks is charming surprise. Eyebrows raised in that practiced expression of innocent confusion. "Colonel. Hey, relax. No need to get all formal about this. I'm just trying to get a little interaction going here. Some mutual respect between a general's son and your staff. You know, basic courtesy." Her expression doesn't shift by even a millimeter. The kind of professional composure that comes from years of managing situations exactly like this one. Respect, sir, is demonstrated by following established protocols, not by demanding acknowledgement from veterans who are performing their ceremonial duties. Their duty, Bradley gestures toward Graham with obvious frustration, his voice carrying that tone of someone explaining something he considers blindingly obvious, is to stand there and look impressive for the visitors. "I'm asking for 30 seconds of actual human interaction. A simple gesture of recognition between my father's legacy and your guard." "Their duty," Colonel Coleman replies, her voice taking on the weight of centuries of tradition and military protocol, "is to maintain the dignity and discipline of this sacred ground. Something they accomplish through silence and steadfast commitment, not through performance or acknowledgement of individual demands." Behind her, almost as if summoned by some invisible signal, a second guard has quietly moved into position. Not threatening, not aggressive, just present. A reminder that while one guard might appear isolated, he's never truly alone. The entire institution stands behind him. Bradley glances between the two uniformed figures, clearly beginning to realize that the dynamics have shifted against him in a fundamental way. "Look, this is getting blown completely out of proportion. All I wanted was a simple salute. Basic military courtesy, the kind of gesture that happens between officers and enlisted men every single day. Military courtesy," Colonel Coleman says with devastating calm, each word precisely chosen and delivered with surgical precision, "doesn't involve harassing veterans who cannot respond without breaking centuries of established protocol. The men and women who stand guard here have earned their position through service and sacrifice." The crowd has gone completely silent now. Even the usual background noise of tourist chatter seems muted, as if the entire cemetery is holding its breath. Phones are being lowered, faces growing serious as people begin to understand that what they're witnessing isn't about celebrity or privilege or family connections anymore. It's about something much more fundamental. The collision between entitlement and earned authority. A small voice from the crowd, that same little girl from earlier, pipes up with the devastating clarity that only children possess. Why doesn't he just leave the soldier alone? Daddy said soldiers have important jobs to do. Her father's response carries across the hushed grounds with perfect audibility. Because he's never been told no before, sweetheart. Some people think the whole world should stop what it's doing to pay attention to them. Bradley's face flushes. Not with embarrassment, but with the slow, burning realization that he's not just being refused. He's being dismissed by everyone present, the crowd, the officials, even the silent guard who won't dignify his demands with so much as a glance. The security officers flanking Bradley don't touch him. Don't apply force. Don't even speak. They simply position themselves and wait. Their presence making it abundantly clear that he has exactly two choices: walk with whatever dignity he can preserve or be escorted in a manner that preserves none of it. This is ridiculous, Bradley mutters, straightening his tie with unnecessary emphasis and declaring loud enough for everyone to hear, this whole place is living in the past anyway. No wonder you needed my father's generation to win your wars. The insult hangs in the air like smoke. But no one takes the bait. No one responds with anger or indignation. The silence that follows is more damning than any retort could have been. He turns and begins walking toward the cemetery gates. The security officers falling into step beside him, close enough to make their point absolutely clear, far enough to preserve what's left of his dignity. His own entourage trails behind at a respectful distance, eyes carefully averted from the crowd that's watching their retreat. Behind them, Thomas Graham remains exactly as he has throughout the entire encounter, unmoved, unshaken, unbowed. The verbal assault, the demands, the proximity of celebrity and wealth, none of it has touched him. He stands as he did before Bradley arrived and will continue standing long after the motorcade disappears into Washington traffic. The crowd watches the retreating figure in absolute silence. Not jeering, not mocking, not celebrating, just observing the natural consequence of demanding respect you haven't earned from people who understand the difference between authority and authoritarianism. As Bradley approaches the waiting motorcade, you can see the diplomatic staff scrambling to manage the situation. Phones already out, probably making the first of many damage control calls that will follow this incident. But in the memorial grounds, something extraordinary happens. That elderly veteran with the airborne pin raises his weathered hand in a slow, deliberate salute, not toward the departing vehicles, but toward the guards who remained at their posts throughout the entire ordeal. His gesture is steady, practiced, earned through decades of understanding what real military bearing looks like. The salute spreads like ripples on water. The young girl who started it all raises her small hand again, her movements more confident now. Her brother follows. Their parents. Then the teenager with blue hair, the university student, the businessman in the expensive coat. One by one, visitors along the barrier turn toward the ceremonial posts and offer their own improvised tributes. Not to wealth, not to fame, not to inherited privilege or family connections or political influence, but to duty, to discipline, to the kind of strength that doesn't need to announce itself because it commands respect simply by existing. Colonel Coleman observes the scene for a moment, her professional mask slipping just enough to reveal what might be satisfaction. Then she approaches Thomas Graham, stopping at the appropriate distance prescribed by protocol. The changing of the guard ceremony continues its ancient rhythm, uninterrupted by the drama that just unfolded. Uniformed soldiers move in perfect formation. Boots strike stone in measured cadence that's echoed off these walls for decades. And the endless cycle of duty and honor continues exactly as it should. As the formal ceremony begins, the visitors who witnessed Bradley's confrontation don't disperse. They remain, watching with new eyes, understanding something they hadn't grasped before about what they're seeing. This isn't just pageantry or tourist entertainment. It's the visible manifestation of principles that run deeper than politics or celebrity or family name. The guards execute their movements with mechanical precision, but everyone present now understands that the precision isn't mechanical at all. It's human discipline elevated to an art form, the result of training and tradition and personal commitment that transforms individual soldiers into something larger than themselves. A teenager filming with his phone turns to his friend, his voice subdued. "Did you see how the guard never even looked at him? Not once." "That's the whole point," comes the reply from a girl who's been watching with obvious fascination. Some things are bigger than whoever's standing in front of you. An American woman, probably in her 50s, speaks to her husband in a voice tinged with embarrassment. "I can't believe he did that. Made us all look like entitled tourists." Her husband replies quietly, "He made himself look entitled. The rest of us just learned something about what real strength looks like." And that's the truth that settles over the memorial grounds. As the ceremony continues, Bradley Hampton arrived expecting deference based on his name, his connections, his assumption that privilege translates automatically into respect. Instead, he encountered something he'd probably never faced before: absolute indifference to everything he thought made him important. Not hostile indifference, not angry rejection, just the complete absence of acknowledgement that his demands deserved any response at all. The guards continue their duties, the tourists continue watching, and the ancient stones of Arlington continue standing. All of them part of something that predates celebrity culture, social media influence, and the assumption that being loud enough automatically makes you right. Somewhere in Washington traffic, a convoy of black SUVs carries away a man who learned, perhaps for the first time in his privileged life, that there are still places in this world where your last name means nothing, your father's achievements don't transfer, and respect must be earned one moment of disciplined silence at a time. So, here's the question that everyone in those memorial grounds walked away asking themselves: when someone demands respect they haven't earned, should you give it to them anyway just to avoid conflict, or should you stand your ground the way Thomas Graham did, silent, disciplined, and absolutely unmovable in the face of pressure? And maybe the bigger question for all of us in our age of social media and instant reactions, where everyone expects immediate acknowledgement and response, is there still power in choosing dignity over drama? In staying silent while someone else makes all the noise? When privilege meets principle, which one should win? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We genuinely read every single one. And these conversations about earned respect versus inherited entitlement matter more than you might think. If this moment moved something in you, if it made you think about what real strength looks like when it doesn't need to announce itself, hit that like button. It honestly helps more than you know and tells us you want to see more stories about the incredible discipline these veterans demonstrate every single day. Make sure to subscribe and tap that notification bell so you never miss our daily stories about the men and women who serve with nothing more than their unwavering commitment to duty.